I happen to be checking out from Publix, and you always notice when you check out, they have this little magazine rack as you check out of Publix. And on it you have all the tabloids like the Examiner and the National Enquirer and the Globe, which are basically tabloids that peddle in gossip. This week's Torah portion contains a story that are on the top 6 list. You see, there are hundreds of stories in the Torah, but there are only 6 that we are commanded to remember every day of our lives. These stories have such great significance that the Torah tells us to recall them every day. And one of the 6 stories that we're commanded to recall every day is the story of Miriam in this week's Torah portion. How she spoke gossip about her brother Moshe to her sibling Aaron, that Moses had separated from his wife, and Miriam went and spoke to her brother Aaron about Moses' separation from his wife. And God intervenes and says to Miriam, "How dare you speak about my most faithful servant Moses?" And God strikes Miriam with leprosy, and Miriam is quarantined for 7 days. And the Torah says this is a story we have to remember every day of our lives. And the obvious reason is because every day of our lives we have to remember never to speak gossip. And even if it's a family member that we're trying to help, we shouldn't speak behind their back. We should speak to that person we're concerned about. If Miriam had a concern about her brother Moshe, she should have spoken directly to her brother Moshe about it. But I think there are actually 6 lessons we could learn from this story. The first is the obvious, not to speak gossip. The second lesson we could learn is that Moses prays for the recovery of his sister, which teaches us that if somebody did offend you and speak behind your back, don't hold a grudge, but forgive them. The third lesson is that the Torah says in his great humility, Moses was the humblest person on the face of the earth. He prays for his sister's recovery, which teaches us a third lesson, that the way to be forgiving is through humility, recognizing that none of us are really perfect. The fourth lesson I believe this story teaches us is that gratitude doesn't have an expiration date. Yes, this is a story that happened 40 years earlier, but yet the Torah tells us that the entire Jewish nation waited for 7 days till Miriam was healed and rejoined the camp. Why? Because she waited and watched over her baby brother Moshe when he was put in the Nile. As a show of gratitude, they waited for her until she recovered. Another lesson that we can learn from this story is that not only does gratitude not have an expiration date, but furthermore, yes, we have to show gratitude. 2, it never expires, even 40 years later. But number 3 is that the gratitude is not only to the people that helped us directly, but even to those who helped us indirectly. Since the Jewish people's lives was saved by Moshe, who took them out of Egypt, and Moses' life was saved by Miriam, therefore the entire Jewish nation showed gratitude to Miriam. And this expands our definition of gratitude. Gratitude is not only to those who helped us directly, but even to those who helped others, who in turn helped us. We have to take it back to that level and say, had they not helped those who helped us, we would not have been helped. So therefore, indirectly, we receive benefit from those people, and we have to show gratitude to them as well. There was a remarkable person by the name of Sir Nicholas Winton. He died at the age of 106. And he was a young man, a stockbroker, a very modest, humble man. And he went to Prague on a skiing trip. And he realized that the Nazis had invaded and they were rounding up Jews and sending them to their death. And so he went and started to organize the Kinder Transport, taking beautiful little Jewish children. And parents were willing to give up their children so their lives should be saved, the most selfless act of love. And he arranged trainloads of children to get permission to travel to England and be adopted by families. All in all, he is credited for saving 669 lives in 8 different Kinder Transport trains that he organized. Unfortunately, the 9th one was stopped by the Nazis, and all 250 kids on that train were killed. And he was so quiet about what he did that he never told anyone until his wife discovered scrapbooks up in the attic with lists of names of all of these children. And in 1988, a British TV show called That's Life brought him in for an interview. And they put a live audience and they told his story and interviewed him about how he heroically saved 669 children through the kinder transport. But what Sir Nicholas Winton didn't know was that in the audience, the BBC had found hundreds of these kids who are now grown, older men and women, and brought them into a live audience, together with their children and sometimes even their grandchildren in attendance. And then they said to Sir Nicholas Winton, we want to introduce you to those people whose lives you saved. And in this documentary that is so powerful, you see Sir Nicholas Winton, who was an old man at the time as well, stand up and turn around, and he sees an entire audience, an entire filled theater of people applauding him for having saved their lives, and in turn saving their children, grandchildren, and all their future descendants' lives. This is what it means to show gratitude, to remember that there were many people along our journey, the journey of our parents and our grandparents and all of our ancestors, who enabled us to be here today, and therefore we owe a debt of gratitude to all of them. Have a wonderful and a grateful day.